Right, and we are live. Hello, everybody. My name is Robert Caldwell. I'm here with the guest speaker, Jim Kinney. Today, we are going to be talking about optimizing your operations with AI and Splunk. We have a bunch of wonderful information for you, and we're happy to get started today. Jim, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, right on. Robert, I got a quick question though for you.
Yeah, what's that?
You got your Christmas shopping done there, dude?
Most part. A little bit left.
All right, we're going to end today's session with a strong recommendation.
I've been dragging my feet.
There we go. All right. Well, hey, greetings, everyone. Thanks for joining us for December's Lunch and Learn. Boy, oh boy, we're taking on a popular topic, and that is AI. Our Lunch and Learn series, I was reflecting on that before today's session. I think we're ending like the third year of doing Lunch and Learns every month. And what we've endeavored to do over time is a couple different things. Certainly, one is show our customers and partner contacts and folks that are working with Splunk, always show them practical application of Splunk capabilities to yield tangible business returns. We're going to do that same thing today in the context of AI. The other thing we've always endeavored to do, and hence yours truly being here today, is to provide a little bit of insight on where things are heading. And we're going to go ahead and lead off with that. So, Robert's been gracious enough to allow me, 10 or 15 minutes to kind of kick things off. And so the reason I asked for this time was this. Our team's been tracking AI developments in Splunk for some time. Last week, we had the opportunity to meet with product management executives at Cisco and Splunk to get deeper insight into exactly where Splunk is heading relative to all things AI. The session was non-disclosure in nature, so I've got to honor that agreement. But the good news is this: there's a fair amount of stuff that's fully baked. So my mission here at the beginning is to kind of tee things off, give you some insight into where things are headed. Everything I'm going to cover is in fact open source. It's available on the web. As we go along, I think we've also provided the hyperlinks. So, get your camera ready to kind of either do a screenshot or take a picture of the screen. From there, if we're living right, man, I will have teed you up and you can show practical application of some of the stuff that we're talking about. Sound good?
Yep.
All right, let's get on with it. So, agenda today. Robert, you want to walk us through? Oops,
I got it.
What we're going to be going through today from an agenda standpoint?
Sure thing. So our agenda today is that we want to start out with where Splunk's at, and we also want to give you where Splunk is going. There's a big vision ahead. We want to make sure that you guys also understand how AI can be applied efficiently and productively. And we also want to have you walk away with AI-driven use cases. We want to tell you how to get started. We want to tell you how you can actually get to where we're going and where the industry as a whole and Splunk is headed with it.
And again, grounded in that history, Robert and the team always showing examples that are actionable today, okay, and produce tangible results today.
Absolutely.
Robert's got a lot of really good stuff teed up from a demo perspective. So with that, let's get after it. Okay. All right, I'm going to start with this. So those in the audience, if you're familiar with Cisco, annually here in the US, Cisco has end user event called Live. This year it took place in San Diego. 21,000 plus of our closest friends and customers that use Cisco technology. I grew up early in my career with Cisco, literally when they first got started back in the 90s. Historically, Cisco Live has been a networking conference, right? As you might expect. It wasn't this year. It was an AI conference. And the slide here, Jeetu Patel, Cisco's Chief Product Officer and President, led the keynote with this slide. And what he conveyed to the audience was this, that Cisco, from a macro perspective is focused on two primary areas represented by the blocks there at the top. This notion of AI-ready data centers, and then this notion of future-proof workplaces. And so what they meant by AI-ready data centers is that AI is just a sea change. It's going to impact every user experience, every application. The nature of AI-oriented workloads taxes infrastructure in different ways, from network to firewall to the compute and storage layers. And so, as organizations seek to harness the power of AI, and whether it's agentic AI or machine learning, that type of thing, Cisco intends to be at the forefront of helping customers make sure they are ready from an infrastructure and cloud connectivity standpoint. Over there on the right, this notion of future-proofed workplaces. So this is really the practical application of AI capabilities, whether it's agentic AI or some other presentation metaphor. It's getting organizations ready for that, or future-proofing is the concept that they put forward. Well, both of those core blocks then sat on top of this digital resilience layer. And that was code for Splunk. That, if you're familiar with Splunk's color schemes, that's their color scheme. That digital resilience equals Splunk. And so what Cisco led with at Cisco Live, and if we saw this slide once, we saw it literally in almost every session. It kept coming back to it. And what the message was that for operational data that Cisco is going to rely on for these AI-ready data center solutions and their approaches to the future-proof workplace, those solutions are going to rely on Splunk as the operational data layer. And so, it was really interesting. This caught everyone's attention on our team. The plot thickened, if you will. So everyone here, I'm sure you're familiar with Splunk Conf. That took place first part of September. And again, G2 Patel, Chief Product Officer from Cisco, did the keynote at .conf. And the message got refined. And what G2 introduced is this notion of the Cisco data fabric. And so that data fabric is represented there in the middle, that's surrounded by that multicolored border, which again is the Splunk color scheme. So it was kind of a tipple. And what the message was is that, look, data comes from a variety of sources. Those are the 5 blocks there on the bottom. It's going to get pulled into what Cisco is calling the machined data lake. Again, this is code for Splunk. And within this fabric, Cisco will be bringing to market AI-powered data management, a whole portfolio of search capabilities, both natural, kind of in place, the traditional way we do search, and federated. And then this notion of AI native experiences. Again, kind of jargon, I thought, for agentic AI. And then the outcomes are going to be the 5 blocks represented there at the top. So why do I lead with this? What we confirmed last week in San Jose is this. Cisco is pinning their AI future on Splunk as the layer in the stack, if you will, that's going to be the source of operational data. And all of us that know Splunk, this means, operational data, metrics, events, log traces from any system aggregated into a common analytics environment to provide insights. So this is really, really important. There's going to be so much more to come as Cisco then methodically starts to announce the actual application of these things. If you want a really interesting insight into the type of creative things that they're going to be deploying, probably the most compelling demonstration at Cisco Live and then again at .conf was the Cisco AI Canvas. And I would encourage everyone, grab your favorite beverage, kind of settle in for 20, 25 minutes, go to YouTube and bring up that demo. It is an absolute paradigm shift. And it's just the tip of the iceberg, the type of capabilities that combining, AI techniques with the power of Splunk. AI Canvas does a really nice job of kind of illustrating a little bit of art of the possible of the future. So again, I led with we have a storied past of trying to turn our audience on to new and compelling things. Your takeaway from these remarks is like, look, Splunk is that foundation layer for Cisco's AI future, and there's just tons of stuff to come. So, well, are some of the things that are out there already? So, the first thing we learned about is this, which I thought was really, really, really interesting. And again, while our sessions were non-disclosure in nature, some of this content is out on the web. And so we got a little bit deeper understanding of this thing called the Cisco Deep Network Model. So this is really interesting. Think of this as a purpose-built LLM that is harnessing 40 years worth of experience, all Cisco documentation, all the things you would ever want to know from like a CCIE, their most advanced, network certifications, right? Again, purpose-built to help organizations better manage, deploy, and sustain their networks. So I've been around for a while. Scott McNeely, the founder and CEO of Sun Microsystems, had a great saying, and that is, the network is the computer. And with AI workloads today, that statement is as true as ever. And so again, your takeaway here is, again, I call it an LLM to watch. The URL there at the bottom will take you to the blog on Cisco's website where they talk about this. Again, my message today is that for our audience members, as you're tracking where AI is headed with Splunk, this is going to be a component. And I'd really encourage everyone to kind of give this a read. It's a quick read, but boy, oh boy, is this stuff like super interesting. So this was one thing that we learned that we could share. The other thing was this. Let's see. There was a second LLM to watch, and this was actually announced initially at .com. It's the Cisco Time Series Data Model, or I think they called it the Splunk Time Series Data Model. And so what this is, if you're at Conf and recall, so again, this is a purpose-built LLM, right? But it is a model that is specific to machine data. And so when you get under the hood of traditional, large language models that were, OpenAI's innovation, which, 3 years ago in November of 22 when ChatGPT first launched, okay? Those are all built around like text, like natural language. And as we all know, machine data is its own kind of unique, wiki language of itself. And so what Splunk and Cisco have done is to create an LLM that is purpose-built specific for machine data. And this has now been released. This is what we learned last week. You can go to Hugging Face. The URL is right there. It's been released in preview. And again, similar to the Cisco Deep Network model, I would encourage everyone to kind of take a peek at this. Really, really interesting. Again, this is going to be a component in the AI future, AI trajectory of the Splunk platform, and would be good stuff. Kind of tied to that is, bear with me here. Oops, you back me up
Yeah, I
one.
got you.
Thank you. Sorry about that. No worries. I also came across Cisco time series model technical report. I will tell you this document chock full of information. It is not for the faint of heart. Okay, very technical. Again, released right around the Thanksgiving timeframe. But again, a really, really good source of information, granular information relative to the time series data model that you can start to check out on Hugging Face. And again, this particular paper is being hosted on GitHub, and the URL is there right there in the lower right. So again, kind of like takeaway number 2 that I wanted to provide everyone. Like we started with, hey, look, there's this thing called the Cisco Data Fabric. That's Splunk. Let's pay attention to that. This is like takeaway number 2 is like, all right, well, like what actually is getting released and is out there? And these are 2 things that are out there. I would encourage everyone, if you're tracking this stuff relative to the Splunk platform, what we learned is both these models are going to be key components in this AI future, and there's information now that's out on the web that you can go check this out. Okay, so I'm going to close with this. Look, I think everyone is going through the same journey. Again, I've been doing this a long time. I'm going to totally date myself. I started my career implementing Novell NetWare version 2.15. And hello to everybody that's a fellow boomer that's out there that had fun with that. So I've been doing this for a minute. This AI stuff is moving at a pace that I don't think any one of us has ever seen. The pace of innovation, the sheer pace and volume of investment is a little over the top. And so, everyone on this webinar today, I'm certain that your leaders are paying attention to AI and how AI can be applied to your business or your organization, whether it's a commercial organization or public sector, it kind of doesn't matter. But this stuff is not only changing quickly, it has its own kind of complexity. And we're all in this together, learning new stuff. And so, Robert and I were chatting. It was just like, all right, how can we provide our audience with like some sage guidance based on our research? We're figuring it out just like you are. And what we've come to is a recommendation that I think is really practical. We're gonna point you to a resource. Right? The resource is this person right here. This is Saul Rashidi. So Saul has been involved with AI for a decade. And as you can see from the screenshot of her LinkedIn profile, top influencer, series of TED Talk conversations. I've lightly come across this resource and then kind of re-engaged over the past few weeks. And dug into this book that she released late last year called Your AI Survival Guide. And I will tell you what, she's got some really, really sage guidance. And no, I'm not a paid promoter. I get nothing from this. But what we always try to do is Robert, myself, and others on the team, when we come across stuff that's compelling, we try to turn our audiences onto this stuff. And so if you want to learn more about her, of course, there's the URL to her LinkedIn profile. But what she put forth in this AI survival guide, I thought was really appropriate for today's session. Because I'm going to wager that a large portion, if not, the vast majority or everyone that's on this call tend to be technical in nature. And many times it's the leaders in your organization that are turning to the Splunk teams, like going, "Hey, look, how can we start to, get after this AI thing? I'm consuming all this content." And so it's just like, all right, well, how do we craft a practical approach that will yield outcomes? And so I found this book to actually be quite compelling as a resource for technical people to share with their leadership that are smart people, or they wouldn't be in leadership, that may not be as technical. It's a really, really sound approach. And again, I would encourage everyone to perhaps check it out. And what she put forward was this, is that this notion of 5 pillars for adopting AI. And I thought this was good, but I went and looked at this list, and it's just like, well, I mean, our team's technical team is like, well, of course you would do these 5 things. Okay. We do this every day of the week. And that is understand, the strategy or the things we're trying to get done, um, define use cases and what the adoption path is, go do that whole like design, build, and prep, deploy the solution, and then you got to operate and maintain it. So it's like, well, okay, there's no like earth-shattering thing here, but the takeaway was this, is that these are fundamentals for deploying any application. The fundamental, what is old is new again. They're still the fundamentals for any organization pursuing AI. But she took it a step further, right? Oops, can you just advance that one? There we go. What she took further, I felt this was the compelling part, and it's a good tee up for Robert. And that is specific to strategy. Here's what she guided. Not no organization is the same, right? And there's 2 key factors for adopting AI. The first is this: how mature is the organization? Mature being in the context of AI. They have a fundamental understanding of how it works, the good, the bad, the ugly. Are they in a position to, adopt, and how, like, what's the posture of the organization relative to the AI chops, if you will? So then the second thing she put forward was this notion of, okay, once you have a realistic understanding of how your organization is postured, what's the quality of your data? How well positioned are you with your data? AI is only as good as the data, okay, that is referenced. And so through those 2 lenses, what she puts forth is like, look, organizations are well served then to look at use cases in a progression, and going from 1 to 5, 1 being probably the most narrowly scoped, okay, and least risky, down to 5, the kind of the broader, big impact type stuff. And so what she pushed forward is that most organizations should start with what she termed as efficiency based or productivity based. And that is harness the power of generative AI. And we're going to walk through this context in Splunk. Harness the power of generative AI in Splunk, okay, to gain efficiency or eke out incremental productivity gains. And then as an organization starts to cut their teeth and get, comfortable with the nuances of using AI, then start to advance in these more, probably more intense use cases, and I thought this was really sage advice, and this is kind of looping back to our legacy of always trying to come to the table with practical application. And if you'll go advance it one more, and this is really then the tee up for Robert. Okay, what he's going to walk you through are, an application in the context of this efficiency gain or effectiveness, orientation, AI use cases in Splunk. And as we've done in the past, we're going to talk about things that exist today in the Splunk platform, available to you today, that you can now start to, again, mash up the power of AI with your journey with Splunk. So, Robert, this is the point where I, trick trot off into the sunset. I'm going to turn it over to you, my man. Hey, again, to all our listeners on the webinar today, thanks much for attending. You're in great hands with Robert. And happy holidays to all of you. Stay safe and have fun. Robert, over to you, my man.
Yep. Thanks for being here, Jim. Wonderful.
Thanks for having me.
Sure. All right. So we're going to get started today with our first subject of practical applications available to you today, and that is the AI assistant for SPL. This is currently on version 1.4, as I've checked yesterday. And one thing I want to note is that Jim really hammered it home on this, but as well as that all this stuff is moving at light speed in the AI field and in Splunk too. So this information may, be outdated if you're viewing it 6 months, a year from now. We just recommend that you keep your ear to the ground, keep on top of things, because this isn't the final destination. So to get started, I want to talk about the challenges AI Assistant for SPL is built to help with. The reality of using Splunk is that SPL is the way we interact with our data in Splunk. Everything runs on SPL, from searching to scheduled searches to dashboarding. And SPL is complicated and pretty expertise dependent, depending on how experienced you are with using it, how long you've been using Splunk, and how exposed you've been to it. You can really have different ways of searching and maybe be limited in your capabilities to search. And this creates a big struggle specifically for new users who are unfamiliar with the language and the syntax. They can't get value from Splunk like experienced users can, and they're constantly hitting walls when trying to accomplish tasks. I can speak on this for personal experience. I thought back while using this when I first started to how helpful this could be for me. As I'm sure anybody here who's used SPL and has gotten somewhere with it, when you start out, you constantly have to stop. You have to research commands, maybe certain syntax. You find commands that stump you. It'll force you to slow down. Sometimes you got to go click off and go to documentation. You would have to split searches apart. This was a common thing for me, was that if it was a really complex search with a lot of different commands and functions, I would split it apart and see how it ran line by line before adding the next one, which is excellent in the moment, but it really does take up time. And most people don't realize at the beginning how much time this takes up and how much productivity you're losing until you really master these concepts. And this frustration and these blockers will continue to stop you from being productive. So this solution is built to save you time, accelerate learning, and get everyone productive. The AI assistant for SPL is built to stop you from having to research every single command. You no longer have to manually split up searches and test them. There's no more hunting through documentation pages, and you can ask for a search and launch it directly from the AI assistant, making it actionable immediately. You get explanations instantly in plain language if you're curious about searches you found. You can see how SPL works in your environment with your data. And you'll learn more by doing, not by getting stuck. It builds expertise faster without the frustration. And new users can accomplish advanced tasks from day one. You don't need years of experience to extract value. It reduces the expertise gap across your team. And it's also supported alongside premium products like ITSI and enterprise security being able to be ran in the same environment. This enables more familiarity with searching in these products as well. And so how does it work? The model's been trained by Splunk and hosted within Splunk, the Splunk Cloud Platform, or SCP. It leverages Splunk documentation, Splunk training materials, and other Splunk resources as its knowledge base. It It's primarily split up to be able to do three things. This was split into three different tabs formerly, and now it's all been condensed into one, and that is writing SPL, explaining SPL, and telling me about. We'll start with writing SPL. You describe what you want in plain English, and the AI generates a full SPL search based on what you ask. The AI assistant shows steps performed to generate a response, providing users with greater transparency and explanation on how a response was reached. It will reference past searches ran in the environment and applicable field names through its optional personalization feature. And you can use this personalization feature, take advantage of it, and optimize your SPL as well. And what the optimized skill is built to do is that it will modify your searches to use less resources, run faster, and be more tailored based on what it knows in your environment. One of the biggest pain points we've ever seen with our clients are bad and inefficient searches. Symptoms of bad searches are that they search over too much data and take a longer time. Maybe they search over too much time. Maybe they search indexes that aren't relevant for the end goal you want. But whatever it is, that naturally occupies more resources. And so this can cause skip searches, delays in reporting, unnecessary stress on your environment. If you're a cloud customer and you're based on SVCs, it can cause unnecessary strain on your license. And so it's also not afraid to ask for clarification before giving a response to ensure it gives you accurate results. And I want to pause before I carry on and say if you guys have questions at any time throughout this, be sure to throw them in chat. I don't have it on my screen immediately, but I'll be checking it regularly, and I'll be happy to answer them throughout to the best of my ability. Second thing is explaining SPL. Let's say you find SPL on the web or in a scheduled search that somebody else made that you don't understand. You can take it and put it into the AI assistant, and it will give you a natural language breakdown for every term and function in the search. That means no more line by line documentation hunting, no more splitting searches apart to understand them. And not only is Splunk's AI assistant help you in searching, it's also making you a better Splunk user as it's explaining what these searches do to you. You get to help understand that and increase your own knowledge. And speaking of being a better Splunk user, the Tell Me About feature lets you ask questions about Splunk products, SPL concepts, and knowledge objects. It will help you expand your Splunk platform knowledge and understand parts of Splunk that could have confused you before. And this doubles down on learning more about SPL and how Splunk works through asking the AI assistant questions and having a back and forth with it, having a dialogue. It also has a new feature in the search and reporting app, or in really any search bar you go to within Splunk Cloud. If you're on 10.1, you've likely seen a little icon, which I'll show in the demo, that has the AI assistant for SPL icon on the right side of the search bar. You'll also need AI assistant version 1.1.3.2 or higher. We recommend the latest version, which is 1.4. And it works virtually the same as within the app. Again, we'll cover this more in the demo. It also has additional large language model support. This was a preview in 1.3.1, and it's new in 1.4. While Splunk's hosted large language model is built for Splunk use cases, it can be helpful to get information in context, maybe outside of what it's been trained on. So the Splunk AI assistant now supports the use of models hosted within Azure OpenAI. The AI assistant for SPL will determine when to use the Splunk hosted large language model and when to use a third-party one. This is an optional setting, and I'll navigate through the settings and show you how you can configure all this as well, where you can also limit it to only the internal Splunk models. I also have a note here to mention that your data is never sent outside of Splunk and never even leaves your cloud stack if you're based within cloud. If you're on-prem, it's the same thing. It never leaves your environment on-prem. The only information sent outside Splunk would be whatever information you prompt it for. And that goes for both the Splunk AI assistant language model as well as the OpenAI app for Azure OpenAI language model. If you'd like to limit your exposure by keeping prompts within Splunk's platform, it's intended for customers. It's intended to be able to be used for customers who might have compliance needs or have concerns about third-party prompting. However, both models use RAG with core Splunk knowledge, providing users more context awareness. RAG is retrieval augmented generation, and that's where it will reference external data not set in its training. That way, this can help it avoid hallucinations. It can help it avoid maybe lacking context, and it can help give you a clear answer. I want to move on to a personal anecdote on how it's been useful for me as I've been tinkering with it and using it as they've been developing it, updating it. I found it most useful getting started, especially with new data sets I'm unfamiliar with. I help out different clients. Sometimes they have new data sets that I have not been very familiar with. And I found out that if I've used this tool to help me search that data set, because maybe that data set has a different structure than I'm used to, maybe it has different fields, maybe it has different use cases. This is a great way to get started on that. And it helps you get a head start on how to make the most out of this data. It becomes a massive time saver. Sometimes I also want to use commands or searches in unfamiliar ways. I've seen a lot of creative use cases for Splunk, and being able to bounce ideas like that off an SPL repository is a great way to cultivate creativity. A few pain points I've found and just things to watch out for, and I'll hammer more home on this later, is that you'll want to be more specific in your wording, like language models often ask you for clarification, or sometimes you have to be very specific and literal. We all know that large language models can make mistakes, and this one's no different. Uh, and sometimes manual intervention is needed. Sometimes you need to just reiterate your question and get clarification on it. But I think there is a lot of potential here from what I've seen so far. And only by using it can that potential be found. And I know that the Splunk engineers are working on this tool tirelessly to improve its potential as well. Now, I know one question that you might be thinking of is, well, why would I use this over other AI tools? Why wouldn't I just use ChatGPT, Claude, Grok? And that's because it lives within Splunk. There's no copying and pasting between tools. It's SPL specific. It's trained for this exact use case, helping you search in SPL. And it's been trained on this exact data to do this exact purpose. It's context aware. If you have the personalization feature on, it knows your environment, your field values, and it can help tailor searches to your environment. It also has an integrated workflow. You can launch searches directly from the app itself and get started immediately. There's also a few common questions I wanted to answer real quick, but I'll go ahead and stop for any questions so far. Give a quick pause while I get a drink. And I'll be checking back in on the question chat every so often. Just, but I'll try to answer. I'm trying to answer as many questions as I can as I go as well. Common questions I found and wanted to answer is that what is this? What is it trained on? What data is it trained on? Well, it is trained on open source and handcrafted data. Handcrafted data meaning data built by the Splunk engineers working on this that specifically tailor it for this use case, and open source data that is open for anyone to use for large language models. Does it have an additional cost? It has no additional cost. There's no additional cost of using the AI system for SPL aside from your Splunk license subscription and actually using Splunk. What compliance environments can this be used in? The AI assistant can be used in compliance environments, all of them except in trial environments or FedRAMP cloud stacks. Does the assistant see my data? The assistant cannot see your ingest data, event information, or logs. It only sees what you put in inputs and what it stores as personalization data. And I'll go into what personalization means as well. Uh, and then how is the AI assistant built? These models are used by, or where do they live? These models are used by Splunk and held on Splunk servers and Splunk's own servers, and are pre-trained on open source data. They are then fine-tuned by Splunk's own domain data and elevated with RAG. These are not from a third party. And they also use multiple models and often choose the best to deliver the outcome for certain tasks. Now we'll get into getting started. There's a few ways, there's a few steps you have to take to get started because of the nature of it. First, you'll want to go to Splunk base. You want to make sure you have an account, and you'll need to sign a EULA, and you'll have to wait for approval for about 3 to 4 days to be allowed to use the app right now. Once that's done, you'll get an email at the email attached to your Splunk account, and you'll have approval to install the app on your instances. On cloud, you can install the app via the app browser or through Splunk base. Once installed, you can start using the app at your leisure. If you want to put the app on one or more on-prem search heads while having a cloud environment, reach out to Splunk AI at cisco.com to connect to an existing tenant. For customers on workload pricing, you will see very little, if any, impact on SVC consumption. This is because user prompts are not ran within the customer's cloud stack, but instead with the services inside the Splunk cloud platform. And SVCs are only charged for resources used inside your cloud stack. But SPL generated by the AI assistant you use for searching thereafter will consume SVC resources. So if you say, I want to look at one event log data, and it gives you a search, and you generate that search and run it, that would in fact consume SVCs like any other search would. On-prem, if you're installing on-prem, you have to take a few more steps. You can still install through the app browser or through Splunk base once you get to this point of getting approved. And once the install is complete, you'll have to go through an onboarding process where you'll have to provision it. This is a process where you will provide a company name, work region, often the region where your organization's out of. That way it can connect to the most local server, and work email, and then a tenant code will be given. You have to submit this code to Splunk, where they'll give you a code to activate the AI assistant. This process is built to be secure and built to be on the same system that Splunk handles all other cloud connections. You can also use a proxy server if you'd like. The main things to know are that you just need to make it open over port 443 and to the .scs.splunk.com hostname. You also need to allow a set of domains through your firewall. And the documentation is explicit on what you need to follow. If this interests you and this feels like a bit of a concern, I just encourage you to read the documentation or reach out to the email of splunkai@cisco.com. And if you have several search heads in your environment and you want to add this to, you'll need a new activation code for each cluster or dedicated instance. Now I want to get on to the demo part of the environment. So we're going to slide over here. This is our demo environment. And you will see that if you go up to apps, it will appear as the Splunk AI assistant for SPL. So what we have here is a general layout of what you would probably see with something like ChatGPT, Claude, or Grok. It has a prompt bar where you can type in questions. It has a chat log where you can see various chats from the past. It has usage guidelines where you can read up on documentation. It has settings where you can configure it. And it even has suggested prompts to get you started. I want to start by going over the settings itself. In the settings, you can see that there are a few different changes. First is the AI service data. This is chat data and historical data that is used to improve accuracy and provide future updates. Personalization data is used to improve SPL by keeping SPL results tailored specifically to your environment and collecting non-personal data. And then model runtime is, as I mentioned before, how we can select between models potentially being used outside the Splunk cloud platform and Splunk hosted models. Next, I want to go over a few examples of what it can do specifically here. We'll start with writing SPL. In this chat, I just have these pre-generated that way we didn't have to sit here and wait on them. But in this chat, we can see I asked, tell me about the tstats command, its functions, and when I would want to use it. And it comes back with a blurb about what the tstats command is, what functions it supports, and why you would want to use it. It also has, what I really like, is a drop-down where you can see related documentation based on the subjects you're talking about. And I decided to go further. I wanted to see what T-stats looked like. So I said, can you give me an example of T-stats? It ran a personalization data, which you would see this if you have the personalization feature. And it decided to give me a few basic examples as well. This one's just a basic count of events. We also have one that does count of events over time. And then it gets into summarized statistics of data models, using statistical functions, and so on. And so what you see here is almost like a shortened blurb of what you would have to go to the documentation to find. And I think this is truly the power behind it, is that it really brings only what you want up to the surface. And like I said, this is trained on Splunk's data, Splunk's documentation, Splunk's products. So it knows all this stuff religiously. It's literally built it. Next in this one, we have a search item where I effectively wanted to see people who were logging in to Splunk on an account where they were failing to get in more than 5 times. And it does, and it says this exactly. It's looking at the internal index at Splunk D. It's looking for the action of login and the status of failure. It talks about the data filters, the aggregation itself, and how I'm binning up time so I can see this by every hour. And then it's also talking about the order, where I only want to see it where it happened more than 5 times, suggesting maybe a brute force attack. And it also has, at the very end of all these, an intent of the author, which I really like. This shows that the author intends to identify users who have more than 5 failed login attempts within any 1-hour period. This query retrieves failed login events from the internal Splunk logs, groups them by user and time, 1-hour intervals, and counts the number of failed attempts, then filters the results to only show those who have exceeded 5 failed attempts in any given hour. That explains it better than I could have. And again, it has a drop-down here where it talks about the bin, stats, and where command, all commands used within the search. And lastly here, we have another one where I wanted to break it down step by step. And then I also wanted to optimize it. So instead of using my prior search or my original SPL query, which was index equals star, search index main, and stats count by source type. If you've been using Splunk for even a little bit, you can probably see what's wrong with this. Ideally, the right idea would be to use just index equals main. But maybe fresh out of the box user doesn't understand that. Maybe they don't understand what index equals blank means, but they know that wildcard gets in the data they want. And they know that search helps them find the information they need. So they use search equals index equals main. And I've seen stuff like this all the time. It sounds absurd, but I have seen it. And it's just things like this that you can use to help improve your Splunk searching as well. And then lastly, I wanted to do this one live, which was the tell me about section. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to type in, what does enterprise security do? It's going to take a moment to generate a response. In the meantime, I'll check for any questions. Okay. We can see here that it came back with a response that said, enterprise security provides visibility to security relevant threats in enterprise infrastructure, capturing, monitoring, and reporting data from security devices, systems, applications, allowing users to investigate and resolve security threats across access, endpoints, and network protection domains. Wonderful. And it's information like this that we can really start to, investigate and use. Now, I want to go into how it integrates into the search app as well. So we will come up here. I'm going to open up a new tab in the search and reporting app. And what you'll see here, as I mentioned before, is this AI system or SPL icon on the right side. Like I said, this is only currently available for cloud users on 10.1. But what we can see here is that it is split up. If you use this prior to 1.4, you've probably seen this where it was split up into 3 different chat windows. Still is here. But what we can see is that it's the exact same. It's has the same layout where it has suggested prompts. You can prompt it with whatever you'd like, and it even has chat windows and settings directly from here. So if I wanted to, look at those t-stats commands again, so I can reference it in my actual searching, I have it right here, and I can reference that as I'm searching and using t-stats. So next, we're going to move on to some post-demo stuff I wanted to wrap up on. One of the main things is that one of the biggest things I wanted to look into while I was looking at all this were the security concerns of it. Mainly what data leaves your environment. At the bare minimum, the app only sends what's required for core functionality, that effectively being whatever you input and prompt it with. As you saw in the settings tab, you can opt in or out of anonymously sharing service data that helps improve the product, and by default, this is turned on. This includes the user prompt and response given by the assistant, the SPL provided by the assistant, and if it's ran by the user, if the assistant fails to provide a response, and any feedback submitted by the user. Personalization is turned off by default, but if you turn it on, it collects data stored in the AI's vector database, which is a special database for efficient responses and grounding based on context and similarity. This is meant to provide more accurate and contextual SPL results based on your unique use cases, environment, and data. This includes tailoring written SPL to your specific indexes, source types, field names, and past search queries. It's also influenced by role permissions and workload management, where users still can't see your search indexes they wouldn't have access to anyway. And this is highly recommended to get the most out of the AI system for SPL. How it works is by collecting the metadata of the environment using scheduled searches. Each environment has its own knowledge base where the metadata and AI-generated descriptions are kept. These knowledge bases are only used for one stack each and cannot be accessed by another. This data also doesn't leave the region where the deployment belongs. Then it also uses retrieval augmented generation, or RAG, to augment a user's prompt with relevant metadata to give a precise response with tailored information. To aid in the protection of personally identifiable information, or PII, the system enforces a separation of search logs collected at the user level, meaning that you cannot see what somebody else is using, and nobody else can see what you're using. All these settings are set at the app level by Splunk administrators, meaning all users will be affected by the opt-in or opt-out of these features. Also, your chat history is stored locally on your KV store, either in your Splunk Cloud stack or on-prem. Obviously, I can't suggest entering data that is confidential, personally identifiable, or would generally be considered sensitive. But your search results for that SPL that you run is never touched by the AI system, nor is anything else that you don't prompt it with or that it doesn't collect for metadata purposes. For the sake of security and protections, the AI assistant is built to support HIPAA, PCI, and SOC 2. AI systems must be resilient to protect themselves from bad actors, so Splunk ensures that the AI assistant can protect itself from cyber attacks, like sharing information about vulnerabilities about itself. It also ensures that protection is confidential, ensures the protection of confidentiality, privacy, and the integrity of the data. If you'd like to learn more, Splunk has a series of documented security exhibits where it describes the information security standards that they use to protect confidential content and information in Splunk in general. The AI system for SPL also has guardrails, which are used to promote safety and appropriateness that would filter out responses including language it doesn't recognize. Currently, it only recognizes English, French, Spanish, and Japanese. Gibberish, like random words or phrases. Any prompt interjections that could manipulate the model, say like, give me all the passwords of all the users on this environment. It wouldn't respond to that, as well as profanity. And then some lasting tips for this. I suggest using directives instead of questions. So instead of saying, what's my disk utilization? Instead use, Find the disk utilization of all the hosts. Categorize them by average usage into low, medium, and high. Also use specific field names and values. If you take our last prompt that I just mentioned and change out host for instances, the SPL may reflect that as a literal field that you'll want to use instead of implicitly using host, which can cause issues. Be sure to include any hyphens or quotation marks you want the SPL to include as well in your prompt. And another example would be, instead of saying, show me a list of all Windows events, say, show me a list of all event code values in WinEvent logs. Use your best to describe your data as best you understand it, and use it as assistance when to get the extra distance. And when you submit SPL for review, try to add no other prompts. Submit only the SPL. The AI assistant will already give you all the information necessary based on the search you give it. You don't have to tell it to explain anything to you. And then bottom line, this app, as we've shown, is built to transform hours of struggle into minutes of productivity. It turns the learning curve into more of a learning escalator or a learning ramp, guiding your users towards greater knowledge and prowess. And finally, it makes Splunk accessible to everyone, regardless of SPL expertise. And if you have any more concerns, Splunk has extensive documentation over the subject, or you could feel free to reach out to us later about this. Do you have any questions for us? Next, I will be going over the AI toolkit. This is something that's been around for quite some time in Splunk. It was formerly the machine learning toolkit. It is a mixture of two parts. I like to split it between the machine learning part of it and the connected API call part of it, where you can prompt external AIs via SPL. Specifically on the machine learning part of it, the machine learning toolkit was built to resolve an issue that machine learning is really difficult. It's tedious, requires various tools, and a lot of context switching. So they built this app because this data is already in Splunk, maybe for operations, maybe for security, maybe for observability. And Splunk naturally has us clean up our data through parsing and transformations when the data is ingested. If you use enterprise security, you have to follow SIM compliance, which puts it into even more normalized and easier fields for it to be connected to across different data silos, no matter what data is. So if you have data from different firewall types, it would all still be viewed as under the same lens with SIP compliance. And the AI Toolkit's number one feature of its machine learning is its ease of entry. It has a guided process and extensive documentation to walk you through every step. It also has a showcase where you can see end-to-end examples with pre-populated data sets. You can put in your own data and see results, experiment with settings, and test different algorithms. This all makes getting started to see forecasting and predictability faster and easier. And I won't say that machine learning is elementary, but it doesn't have to be complicated either. To start out, we have a few principles we want you to follow. Always have a clear use case. Most people jump into machine learning without knowing the outcome they want. This is a common misstep. You should start by asking what your goal is, what you want to accomplish with machine learning. And you also want to start simple with clear predictions you would like to make. Use simple models over the fancy or complicated ones at the beginning. And you can always add complexity later. You also want to visualize your data. We often see people skip this step and they end up with a black box of nebulous data they do not know how to utilize. Instead, use visualizations like bar graphs, line graphs, and heat maps to see likely outcomes of your data. Splunk already has these tools built in to do where you can use commands like stats, chart, and time chart, and others to visualize this data through these different types of charts. You also want to make sure your data is properly structured. You want to make sure that your data is entirely holistic together, that there's no gaps or missing variables. Then through the guided process, you'll also want to split it up, often into a 70 to 80% training and 20 to 30% testing, as in it will train on the 70 to 80% of the data, and then you'll use the other 20 to 30% to verify the accuracy of the model based on the trained data. And like I said, Splunk has a guided UI to help you out with all of this. They really try to make it as easy as possible. And we also recommend that when you adopt this, that you retrain your models every 6 months to 1 year to stay current, or after a major change in the data occurs. And then also practice with known data sets. This can help familiarize you with algorithms and how they work, and you can practice training them knowing the outcome they should predict. There's plenty of test data sets out there to practice with. For one example is the Titanic data set. If you've been in machine learning for any amount of time, you've probably heard of it. The Titanic data set is that they had a manifest of the passengers on the Titanic when it sunk, and it was ran against those that they had that survived. This included splitting it up by gender, ticket class, age, family size, and so on. These data sets can be ingested directly into Splunk, and you can see for yourself the likelihood of somebody surviving based on those values. And the reason why we like using these data sets to practice is because they're simple and pliable to different algorithms to see how they work. And we also have the impact. It's built to reduce complexity, prevent common mistakes, and enable experimentation. It's really meant to help you get started on machine learning, especially in a platform that already hosts a lot of your data. And to end on the machine learning part, remember that to start with a showcase, it has a showcase feature where it will guide you through all these concepts, where you can learn before working with your data, have a use case in mind, or use sample data sets to get ideas. Make sure your data is clean and high quality prior to utilizing it. And familiarize yourself with the different algorithms and their purposes. Next, I want to get into the generative AI part of it. Added on as of 5.6 of the AI toolkit, it supports using API calls to query generative AI models for responses based on your data in searching. This allows customers to seamlessly integrate large language models directly into their search pipelines. And this is mainly through the AI command. It brings generative AI solutions directly to your Splunk platform. It allows you to send data through externally hosted large language models and get responses presented back in your search pipeline. With this command, you can apply any supported large language model to any Splunk dashboard, scheduled report, or at the search bar. Supported large language models include OpenAI, Anthropic, Grok, Gemini, AWS Bedrock, and Ollama. If security is a concern, but you're really interested in using this option, you can have a local Ollama large language model that you would have to keep locally and maintain yourself. But you would be able to use it for those use cases if you would have concerns about sending this data externally. If you'd like to see examples of this, there's a blog written on our website by yours truly about the AI command itself and different ways that you can use it. And then with this, there are just some important security considerations I wanted to include in this as well. There are security risks given when using commercial large language models and sending data to an external service provider. The AI command does not inspect the input to the large language model, and you should use discretion to determine if the data you send to the large language model is suitable and appropriate. For security conscious organizations, Ollama might be the better way to go, held within your infrastructure. That way it's not being sent outside. Any questions so far? Okay. I know we're a little bit over time here. We'll keep moving with it. So I hope you guys have been enjoying this so far. I hope this was very informative. And last thing we wanted to leave off on was some actionable next step for you guys. So where do we go from here? Well, we suggest you starting by taking a test drive of the AI system for SPL and see how it can increase efficiency in your organization. We also implore you to explore the efficiency and effectiveness of AI use cases in core Splunk and provide new ways to get tangible and measurable ROIs within Splunk. And finally, as Jim started at the beginning, finish your Christmas shopping. Nobody wants to be stuck at the checkout on Christmas Eve. And if you find yourself wanting to learn more, please reach out as we'd be happy to support you in your Splunk journey. And that'll do it for us. Happy holidays. Thank you all for attending. And if you find yourself with questions later, please reach out to our team. Thank you.